Hi, you're watching Reddit Shikstore, and if you're looking for a story that doesn't start with butterflies in your stomach and a happy ending, you've come to the right place. My name is Silas. For 30 years, I was a master horticulturalist and landscape architect. My clients were not homeowners. They were billionaires, tech founders, and sovereign wealth funds. I didn't design gardens, I engineered ecosystems. I built biodomes in the desert, curated private rainforests for penthouse terraces, and revived dead soil on thousand-acre estates. My work was an exercise in patience, control, and understanding the hidden relationships between living things, the symbiosis, the parasitism, the delicate, murderous balance of nature. My wife, Anya, was the curator of contemporary art for a foundation that bore her family's name. Her world was one of explosive color, chaotic expression, and immense, fragile egos. She brought the wild, untamed soul into our life of cultivated perfection. I loved the contrast. I was the root structure, she was the rare, blooming orchid. I discovered the betrayal not through a crack, but through an invasive species. A new piece appeared in our home gallery, a violent, magnificent sculpture of welded scrap metal and blown glass. It was titled Conflagration of the Heart. It was a gift from an artist she was championing, a man named Leo Thorne. He was a phenomenon, the bad boy of neo-brutalism, famous for his destructive public installations and his scorched earth interviews. He was entropy, given form and a 7-figure auction price. The evidence was in the pollen. Anya began coming home with traces of a specific, unusual yellow ochre dust on her clothes and in the cuffs of her trousers, the exact pigment Leo used in his signature oxidation process. Then came the late nights at the studio, a raw warehouse space the foundation had secured for him. Her scent changed beneath her usual jasmine. I detected the sharp, acrid notes of welding smoke, mineral spirits, and a cheap, clove-heavy cigarette brand I knew Leo smoked. A horticulturalist understands that the most deadly blight often begins as a single, microscopic spore. I did not confront. I began to study. I observed their ecosystem. Their affair was a perfect, parasitic symbiosis. She gave his chaos legitimacy, access to old money and critical acclaim. He gave her a thrilling rebellion against her gilded cage, the adrenaline of touching something dangerous and raw. To destroy one, I would have to poison the environment they both depended on. Leo's art was priceless, but his business was a fascinating ruin. Through a series of shell companies and a desperate gallery owner deeply in debt to one of my oldest clients, for whom I had once saved a priceless arboretum, I gained visibility. Leo was financially illiterate. He sold pieces for millions but was hemorrhaging cash on studio rents, failed fabrication experiments, and penalties for damaged property. His vice was not drugs or gambling, but scale, an obsessive need to build bigger, more destructive pieces, regardless of cost. I saw the fragility. An empire of scrap metal and ego, built on quicksand. I decided not to push. I would simply remove the water. Anya's power was her impeccable taste and her foundation's sterling reputation. I needed to create a fungus that would eat at both. I hired, through several untraceable intermediaries, a brilliant, bitter art restorer who had been blacklisted for pointing out forgeries. I provided her with a private lab and a simple directive. Perform the most rigorous, forensic material analysis possible on Leo Thorne's recent work, particularly pieces involving patented chemical patinas and proprietary alloys he claimed to invent. The report was a dry, scientific masterpiece. It concluded that Leo's revolutionary corrosion technique was a well-documented, industrial process used in shipbuilding, and that several of his unique metal alloys were, in fact, common, off-the-shelf grades from a specific German supplier. There was no genius, only clever appropriation and obfuscation. I didn't publish it. I anonymized it and sent it, as a concerned donor, to the head of the foundation's board of trustees, a famously conservative banker with a deep suspicion of contemporary art. The question was planted. Was the foundation's reputation being used to launder artistic fraud? Simultaneously, I targeted their personal ecosystem. I learned the identity of Leo's previous major patron, a reclusive Italian countess. I had my landscape firm in Tuscany, a legitimate branch of my business, reach out to her estate, offering pro bono consultations. During a walk through her gardens, my project manager, following my script, casually admired a thorn sculpture she had rotting in a corner. "A bold choice," he said. "It's a shame about the core instability. We're seeing similar issues with the steel substrates in coastal installations." He planted the seed of doubt. The countess, feeling foolish, quietly sold her thorn piece at a significant loss. The first domino fell. The market, a creature of exquisite sensitivity, felt the tremor. With doubt seated in the board and the market growing skittish, I orchestrated a perfect, isolating frost. Anya was preparing for Leo's crowning achievement. A massive public installation in a flagship city park. It was her legacy project. I discovered, through my network of engineers, that Leo's design pushed the limits of public safety. His planned cantilever was, in their professional opinion, a windstorm away from a lawsuit. I didn't sabotage the plans. Instead, I became a patron of public safety. I anonymously funded a city watchdog group and directed them to the specific, concerning structural calculations. I then provided a generous grant to a rival, more traditionally accomplished public sculptor, loudly championing enduring and safe civic art. The city's Arts Commission, now nervous and armed with expert concerns from the watchdog group, postponed the installation indefinitely for further review. The story made the arts section. Thorne's monumental vision stalled by safety fears. For Anya, it was a public, humiliating failure. For Leo, it was a catastrophe. His entire financial house of cards was built on the anticipated payment for this commission. Desperate for liquidity, Leo made his fatal mistake. He arranged a private, high-stakes sale of a new, groundbreaking piece to a Qatari collector. The collector, however, was a fiction, a digital phantom I created, represented by a persuasive agent, a retired actor on a generous retainer. The terms were all upfront payment for a piece not yet fabricated. Leo, under crushing financial pressure, took the bait. He used the advance to pay off his most pressing debts. Then, the collector vanished. The payment, routed through a series of offshore accounts I had set up for entirely legitimate business purposes, was reversed due to bank irregularities. Leo was left with nothing but more debt and a half-finished, unsellable piece. At this exact moment of maximum vulnerability, I unleashed the art restorer's forensic report. Not to the public, but to Leo's gallery, his remaining two collectors, and Art Forum magazine. The headline wrote itself. Alchemy or Appropriation? The deconstructed genius of Leo Thorne. The collapse was total. The gallery dropped him. The foundation, to save itself from the scandal, severed all ties with Leo and, by painful but necessary extension, with Anya. Her judgment was deemed catastrophically compromised. She was offered a generous, silent severance and a recommendation to pursue independent curatorial projects. In the world of institutional art, it is the kiss of death. She sits now in the atrium I built, surrounded by impossible orchids and silent, perfect greenery. The woman who commanded rooms with her passion is now a ghost in her own home. She believes in a cruel conspiracy. A jealous rival artist, a cowardly board, a fickle market, and a fraudulent man who took her for a fool. She looks to me, her steady, earthbound husband, her only remaining tether to stability. I built my life on sand, Silas, she whispered last night, tears falling onto the soil of a potted fern. I handed her a cup of tea, my soil-stained fingers gentle against hers. No, my dear, I said, my voice a soft rustle of leaves. You built it on a fault line. I simply understood the geology. And I did. I didn't hack or shout or burn. I applied pressure to the precise points of structural weakness. I altered the financial climate, introduced a blight of doubt, engineered a frost of public failure, and culminated it with a wildfire of exposure. I used the principles of my life's work, ecology, patience, and systemic understanding, to create a perfect, inescapable ruin. Now, I tend to my garden. I care for my silent, beautiful wife. And I listen to the profound, absolute silence that has grown in the place where her world once roared. It is the most serene, most terrible harvest I have ever reaped. In the end, the master gardener's revenge is not to wield the axe, but to expertly prune a life back to the stump, ensuring it will never bear fruit again.